Okay, you ready to roll, Molly?
Thank you, everybody, for coming back today. What a special session we have for you. Of course, we're back again this week with the former and retired Honorable Senator and Representative Pete Lee, and equally honorable and wonderful, very seasoned practitioners, both of them, Lynn Lee as well. And we have a very special guest to introduce to you today in just a moment. We want to welcome you back. We only have an hour together today, so we're going to dive right in. Restorative Justice on the Rise is partnering with Pete and Lynn to do a series about victim empowerment and restorative justice progress in Colorado, and this is part 2. It's always an honor to talk about these topics and to hear real stories. And I'm Molly Rowan Leach. If you haven't met me before, thanks for being here. If you're listening in after the fact, thank you for tuning into our podcast. So we're going to get right into it today. Again, like I said, we have a very, very special guest with us. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Pete and Lynn, to go ahead and make that special introduction and dive right in.
Okay, well, thank you, Molly. I appreciate it. And thanks to all of the restorative justice advocates who are tuning in to listen to our discussion and to listen to Jason's story. I wanted to back up a little bit to review just quickly what we did in the prior session, and that was to discuss the need for a change in the criminal justice system in Colorado and around the nation. We have these intolerable incarceration rates. We have minimal success with 50% recidivism. We have disproportionate minority incarceration, and we're spending billions of dollars on counterproductive policies in the prison industrial complex with minimal success. In response to that, Colorado developed a restorative justice approach over the past 12, 15 years, and we've passed 9 bills in a split legislature. So my goal this morning was to talk a little bit about how we did that, and I'm going to cut this a little short because Jason is joining us, but I wanted to talk briefly how we passed all of those bills in Colorado with a split legislature, Republicans and Democrats. And basically what we did was we built a network of restorative justice advocates from throughout the state in the criminal and juvenile systems. We talked with multiple people who worked in criminal and juvenile justice. We gave them significant drafts of our proposed laws and allowed them to provide input, suggestions, and changes. Specifically, we worked with the Colorado District Attorney's Council. We worked with COVA, the Victim Assistance Group, law enforcement, and we significantly started with the children. Our first bill was a juvenile bill. And then it was a process of educating legislators and, what is restorative justice? When I first came to the legislature and I told my colleagues I was going to propose a bill on restorative justice, the response I got from many was a furrowed brow and, what is that? So we had to explain a lot. And then moving forward, I think the other keys to our success there in Colorado was that we compromised and worked a lot with the stakeholders to satisfy their desires. But significantly, what we did is we molded the message to the audience. We talked to people from in their the place that they were coming from. So one of the first people I spoke to was a libertarian Republican from the eastern plains of Colorado who really didn't believe that the government had much role in doing anything except for maybe national defense and taking care of highways and things of that sort. So I talked to him with his suspicion about government about people solving their disagreements among themselves without the government being involved. And as you know, restorative justice works with facilitators, and they separate themselves from the system and work out their disagreements. Well, he turned to me after that explanation and said, Pete, you've got me. To the fiscal conservatives, and there are many in Colorado, we talked about cost savings and how much money we could solve. To the progressives, we talked about creating community and repairing relationships amongst people. To evangelicals, we talked about redemption. We talked about atonement. To moral conservatives, we talked about individual responsibility and accountability. And then to law enforcement, we spoke about enhanced public safety, improving recidivism and restitution. To victim advocates, we talked about respect and the beginning of healing. So the elegance and ease of restorative justice is it has really something for everyone. It's truly a transpartisan solution. So with that experience in mind, with the 9 bills in effect, the next thing we were going to be talking about and want to spend today on is victim empowerment. How do we move forward with expanding restorative justice? And I talked about my proposal for a victim empowerment bill. We would like victims to be more central to the system and have the system responsive to their needs. And in that regard, we are honored today to be joined by Jason Kasparek, who has been a victim and engaged in restorative justice. So to introduce Jason, I want to turn you over to Lynn Lee, who actually facilitated Jason's restorative justice conference and has gotten to know him very well over the last couple of years. So Lynn, there you go.
Good morning, and thank you, Pete. Yeah, last time we were together, I had brought a case around a death that occurred through fentanyl. And I had actually thought that I would bring Jason's story to you as well, but we didn't get there. So better than me telling you Jason's story is Jason telling his story. And I really appreciate you being here today, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
I facilitated 2 conferences for Jason in 2 different Department of Corrections facilities in Colorado. And yeah, Jason, if you could talk about each of those a little bit, and then maybe also talk about where you're at now. Like, you know, I know you have a relationship with one of the gentlemen, so that would be great if you could tell whatever part of that story you'd like us to know.
Okay. Well, should I start with what happened?
That would be fabulous. I haven't told them anything.
Okay. Well, and thank you everybody for being here. And in 1998, I was the assistant store manager for a Blockbuster Video. And I was the opening manager, so I had to be there about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I went into work that day and unlocked the doors going in and went in and shut the alarm off. I did lock the door behind me before I shut the alarm off, but as soon as I shut the alarm off, I started hearing like a big banging in the building. At that time, I just thought because we were supposed to be getting the air conditioning fixed on the roof, that it was them on the roof putting the new air conditioning on there. Until I kind of got a glimpse out of my peripheral vision of a gentleman running at the window, trying to kick the window in. As soon as I saw that, I started looking for a place to hide. I kind of knew what was happening at that point, and I ran over to the drop box and looked at the night drop box to see if that cabinet was empty enough for me to climb into. And it was not. So I ran up towards the front of the counters, and I am still just behind the cashier's counters at that time. I haven't even made it into the management office yet. And the next thing I know, I hear a really loud bang and everything started falling off the walls, the movies and stuff. And then I saw and remembered that the management told me that there was a silent alarm right up under one of the registers, so that if we were getting robbed, I could push that button and it would just send a silent alarm right to the police department and they would get there. And we were only off of Mississippi and Chambers at that time, so the police department was about 2 blocks away from the store. So I pushed that button, and as soon as I pushed that button, I noticed a gentleman screaming from behind me, and he was covered from his head to his toes. The only thing I could see was his eyes. He had gloves on, he had a hoodie and a mask, and he grabbed a hold of me and told me to start moving towards the back of the store. Well, I thought that since I pushed that silent alarm, I just needed to kind of throw him off his game a little. And so I was walking slower than he liked, and he kind of started hitting me from behind and pushing me towards the back of the office area where the safe and everything was. And then to throw him off his game again, when he was pushing me, I said, "Oh, you want me to run?" And I just took off running, because I was in a straight hallway area where if I could run fast enough away from him, because he didn't have a weapon on him that I saw, if I could run fast enough away from him, then I could get to the simplex lock on the management door and be able to get in there, and then I would be safe. So I started running towards that manager's office and outran him. And when I got to the management office, I noticed that the door had been kicked in, and I pushed the door, and all of a sudden I ran into the barrel of a rifle, a bolt action high powered hunting rifle. I had no idea that there was 2 people in this store at that time until that moment. And the gentleman that was following me, that I was running from, caught up and said, "Don't kill him, don't kill him. I'm okay, he didn't hurt me." So they took me into the office and at gunpoint and put me in front of the safe. And since it's a digital safe, I only have 3 times to try and start or to get the lock to work. So I went to put the code in the first time, and I was just nervous and scared, so I messed it up the first time. I went to go ahead and put it in the second time, and the gentleman then hit me from behind with the gun, and I slipped and actually accidentally pushed the wrong button again. And I turned around and told him, I said, "Now, if I mess this up the next time," I said, you guys won't get anything, because it's going to lock down for at least a half hour. And so I went ahead and put the code in, and I got it right that time. And I opened up the safe, and I was still thinking at that time that the police were on their way, so I wanted to kind of throw them off still. And I started handing the tills out of the safe that were in there, that were made for the upcoming day. And then they said, "Where's the deposit? We want it all." And I still trying to throw them off, I grabbed the bag and I unzipped it and I said, "Oh, you want it all?" And I started throwing money over my shoulders. And so they grabbed a hold of me and threw me out of the way and grabbed the money and stuff off the floor and made their way out of the store. I followed them out of the store right after they had left. So I got a complete description of the vehicle that they got into and left in. And from my understanding, when I got that and the police finally got there and everything, I gave them the description of the car and it went out through the Blockbusters and the Hollywood videos and stuff like that that were out there at that time, so that they had a car description if they saw it again. Not knowing that the two gentlemen or one of the gentlemen that had robbed the store was an assistant store manager at another Blockbusters. And since he did not work the day after the robberies, he did not know that they had placed a description of the vehicle. And he actually ended up showing up in the getaway vehicle at work. And that's where I think that they said that he was caught at that time. And I'm not seeing any of you guys on here anymore. Okay, there.
Yep, we're still here, Jason.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I didn't. My whole screen showed just my face, so I didn't know if anybody was there still.
Molly did that for you.
Oh, okay. But as far as that situation in 1998, I had made a very harsh decision as well. Just a spontaneous decision, should I say. Because when all was said and done, with the 6 stores that they had robbed and stuff, mine was considered the biggest case, due to the fact is they considered it as kidnapping and assault with a deadly weapon and burglary. And so the kidnapping charge was also in there with my case at my store. But I was supposed to go ahead and go to court and testify against them, and the regular stuff, things of that nature. But then Blockbuster came up to me later and said that they were going to go ahead. They didn't need me to testify anymore, and that they would probably go ahead and do some type of deal where they were just going to plead out for something. But it was also they told me they would be serving 98 years. And that's where my spontaneous decision was. And due to the fact is in that situation, all they do is remind you of the situation that happened. They remind you just to remember how scared you were. Just remember, how terrifying it was for you, and you just let that fear and that anger build up, and is 98 years good for you? And when all you think about is that, instead of having the time to sit back and think about the moment in time, I said, yes, absolutely, that would be good for me. So after all was said and done, there was, and this is around the time that Lynn Lee came in, and I started working with her. We found there was a mistake made, because both of them were found, and the names of these gentlemen, one of them was Rene Lima Moran, and he was the one with the rifle. The other is Michael Clifton, and he was the one that approached me at the front of the store, but did not have a weapon. They were both sentenced and tried at the same time in the same court, and were supposed to both get the same sentences. And there was a clerical error made on Renee Lima Moran's paperwork, and he was supposed to serve 98 years. And due to the clerical error, I believe he got out after I think it was 6 to 8 years. And again, as the victim, I was supposed to know if any of these gentlemen got out of jail, or when they did get out of jail. I was supposed to know. They were supposed to let me know, and they never said anything to me. I had no idea that he had been released from prison, and he had been out for 6 years living his life, and with his wife and his kids and things of that nature. And I again was very, very upset about that, and was very much adamant on asking why this had happened, why I was not informed, how did he get out of jail for so long? Because the only reason I found out that he was out of jail was because of the fact that there was a big controversy that they were trying to go and arrest him again and put him back in jail because of their clerical error. Well, I was all about it at first to go ahead and put him back in jail, just because I was upset about what had happened and what was going on. And when Lynn Lee got involved and gave me the opportunity to go ahead and meet Renee Lima Moran and sit there and talk to him face to face, I wanted the opportunity because I couldn't sit there and judge a man for what he had done, you know, many, many, many years ago. I can't judge someone for just a moment in time and say that this person is going to be the same person that made this one mistake. If we were all held accountable in that way for our mistakes, none of us would ever be free or be forgiven. And I have a lot of mistakes that I have made that I have had forgiven, just due to the fact is people have forgiven me for my mistakes. It was just a moment in time. He didn't kill anybody. He sure, he scared us. He put fear into us, but he never hurt anybody. He never killed anybody. And he just stole corporate money. And so I couldn't sit there and give them an honest opinion if I thought that he should go back to prison, just judging him on what he had done and not who he is. And I had to judge him at who he was and look at him. So that's when Lynn Lee got involved, and we got together and had a face-to-face sit down and found out that this gentleman is now a pastor right up from the street from my mother and father's old house before they passed away. It was about a mile away from my mom and dad's house, and he had been a pastor and a preacher there for a long, long time. And he had a wonderful family. He does great things in the community. I got to see him as a person instead of see him as that moment in time for that mistake. And we both hugged when we left. It was a wonderful meeting. And again, it never would have happened without this restorative justice or without Lynn Lee there. And when it came down to it, that when Michael Clifton had heard about Renee Lima Moran getting his clemency, again, Michael Clifton absolutely has the right to go ahead and ask for his as well. Due to the fact is they both should have got the same sentence. So, it's not right to hold him there at all either. But then the governor's office came to me and got a hold of me and asked me how I felt about him possibly getting clemency and how I felt as a victim. That was the very first time they came up to me and asked me that. And I basically told him, I said that I couldn't honestly tell you, due to the fact is that, again, I don't know who he is. I can't judge him for a moment in time. He's already been judged for that. I need to see if he is going to be the same person if he is given clemency. Is he the same person, or if my voice and my opinion count in this clemency, then I don't want to go in there and say, yes, just go ahead and set him free, because what if we are setting free the same person that is going to put people and everybody in harm's way? Or is he totally different, and would the clemency do good for everybody? And I told him, the governor's office, that I would like to meet with Michael Clifton face to face, the same as I did Renee Lima Moran. And I told them that the person that could make that happen, and the only person that I wanted to make that happen, was Lynn Lee. And so I told them, after I had talked to Michael Clifton face to face, then I will be able to give you a good answer. And so again, Lynn Lee set everything up, and we went to Sterling Correctional Facility, where for the first time in 25 years, I had met face to face with Michael Clifton again. And it was amazing, and it was very humbling to see him and what he has done for not just himself, but in the positive fashion of everybody that's in there, a lot of the men that are in there, that he has helped. And I went in there to talk to him, and the first thing that I asked him was, or I made perfectly clear to him that, I said, so tell me about your life in here. And I said, and please don't BS me at all. I said, I know that not everything's roses in here. You have to go in, and you have to make your acknowledgement inside of that prison. You can't just go in there and tell me that it's been candy and patty cakes all along. So I've had family members in the prison system. I know you have to go and establish yourself. So he went ahead and told me, for the first 5 years that he was in there, he was in solitary confinement. He was in there for 5 years, because of his choices of what happened and what went on in there. So I knew that he was going to be honest with me. And we started talking, and we talked about what had happened. And we actually talked not a whole lot about what had happened. We both already knew what had happened. We're trying to find a way to kind of get past that point. So we talked about what had happened in my life while he was in there, and what he did while he was in there. And he is an absolutely amazing man. And after the 5 years of him being in solitary confinement or isolation, he started doing plays and podcasts and things of that nature. And I believe, understanding him the right way, is that Sterling is the only penitentiary in Colorado that the inmates have actually do a live podcast outside of. And that all happened because Michael Clifton initiated that whole thing and was able to get where the inmates could go ahead and voice their opinion or talk to other people through the podcast that way. And he helped a lot of people with their paperwork for their prison paperwork and their court documents and things of that nature. He helped a lot of them doing that. He also started a group that does all sorts of plays, and they were all the actors and things were inmates. And they have actually, even while he was in prison, these plays that he was doing and things of that nature were allowing them to even be taken outside of the prison to go to different stages and different performance areas to go ahead and perform their plays in front of the public without being inside of the prison. And he has done so much, and it helped me to get past that. You can't just judge and live in that moment of what happened, because that moment will always be there and terrify you and scare you. So if you only live in that moment instead of looking past that moment and seeing who this person is that made that mistake, it really humbles your soul, and it really gives you more power. Because I have a huge family now, due to the fact is that when with the meeting with Michael Clifton, and I walked out of there, and I walked out and hugged him, and I told him, I said, I love you, and I will do everything that I can and to get you out of this prison. And so that's when I started working with Lynn Lee and talking to Senator Pete Lee, and did a podcast with Deb, and went ahead and notified other people that I had been in contact with when Renee Lima Moran's case was still going on as well. And I have met his mother and his father, who are just mom and dad to me. I have a huge new family. Me and Michael Clifton are brothers. We see each other all the time now. And I plan on going out very soon to New Orleans to go and visit Mom, Ernestine Clifton. And so this whole thing where that one moment in time brought everything and everybody together and changed everybody's life for absolutely the positive. I understand that I still feel bad about sometimes thinking, all I did was think about how scared I was and everything else. I didn't think about him, because before the sentencing, nobody ever told me that he had 2 children. Nobody ever told me that he was actually engaged. Nobody ever told me about who he was. They just said, remember the terrible things he did to you. If they would have told me about that, I would have had a much different opinion on the length of time inside of that prison. But I was never informed of that until later. And I had to go around, and for my own self, I had to go and tell his son, I am so sorry for taking your dad away from you for so long. I am so sorry. I made a split decision that was a bad choice, just like your father did to rob the store. I made a split decision on ruining his life as well. And I never should have done that. I never had the opportunity to. But me and the family are very, very tight, along with, Michael Clifton, physically, or should I say, pretty much at least once a week or so we see each other. So, but that's kind of the story of how it all came about and ended up to where it is now. And Michael Clifton now, on the 31st of this month, there is a movie opening because of the very last play that he did. He had to actually do it inside of his the pod, inside of the prison pod where he was located at, because they were supposed to go and do that last play outside in an open venue somewhere, but something happened and they could not leave the prison. So the whole pod got together and decorated the pod and set it up so that he could do the play actually there. So there is a production group that really liked that. So they went ahead and made a movie out of it. And so Michael and I are having to open the movie theater up, or open up for the movie on October 31st, because his plays are very, very good. So, and as soon as he gets out, he has a movie that he has already made, that is made in remembrance of him, in a sense. So, but this has definitely changed my opinion in my life very much, in a very wonderful way. I wish that it would have been possible to have Michael on here today, but I think he is working right now.
Jason, thank you so much. I have a question for you about, maybe you could talk to them for just a minute about your support person.
Oh, my support person. Oh boy. She is absolutely fabulous. My support person is definitely my wife, Deanna Kasperic, and she is now my wife. Before, when everything was going on, and it was just getting started, I was still living in Pueblo, and I was doing mostly everything out here in the Aurora and Denver area with Lynn Lee and stuff. So at that time, who was my girlfriend, I absolutely threw her under the bus. She had no idea everything that was going on. I had told her what was going on and things of that, because at the same time I was also going through court dates because my brother was being sentenced also. So I was down there dealing with going and meeting with Renee and with Rick Salinger from News Center 4 and things of that nature. So she kind of saw the craziness around it, but she never really saw it until I started asking her to come with me. And she has, no matter what I've chose or decided to do, she has been there and backed me up 100% all the way through it. And all she did was get pushed right into it. I was more like a scared puppy, I guess I can say. I just grabbed her hand and held on to her, and then that way I felt okay no matter where I went. So it was better, much better having her with me all the time because I felt so much better with her there. But she is absolutely wonderful. She has come with me. She knows all of the family. She is very close with Ernestine and Larry as well. So, which is mom and dad, and with Michael as well. And so, but my wife has been there the entire time by my side. And like I said, she was just maybe not even thrown under the bus, was like thrown under and run back over a couple of times, because she rearranged her work schedule for any time that we had to go and meet with somebody, or I was doing a podcast, or she would rearrange her work schedule so that she could be there with me. But she is just absolutely incredible. She is just a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Thank you, Jason. I think, I want to leave a minute for questions, or a few minutes, not a minute. But as a facilitator, a really unusual piece for me is that this case first came to me through Rick Salinger, who Jason referenced there, and he's a news reporter with Channel 4 News. He wanted to videotape the conference with Renee Lima. And I had never been contacted by a reporter before in the context of restorative justice. So, it was really important for me to make sure that that was okay with Jason and that was okay with Renee. And also for Mr. Salinger to understand his role in the process and be respectful of the process and all of that. And I forgot he was in the room, and he was there with 2 cameramen with these huge cameras. And yeah, so that was just a really unusual experience for me. Both Jason and Renee Lima were fine with him being there. So just thought I'd share that with you in the context of facilitation and what sometimes comes along.
Yeah,
So-
and Rick Salinger has pretty much done all of the if we had any news there, like when Michael Clifton left the prison, when he got out that day, Rick Salinger was there and recorded him leaving, because at that time I was like, oh my goodness, can't you let him out a little sooner? And because I was in Belize on the day that he got released, so Rick Salinger sent me the video of his release and stuff like that.
So any of those of you who have joined us, including Pete and Molly, if you have questions, I saw Pete, you put something in the chat, a few things in the chat.
Sure, I'd like to ask Jason. Well, first, thanks very much for telling that amazing story. And sort of the backdrop of this today is victim empowerment through restorative justice. And you really told a story of how restorative justice empowered you as a victim, that you got a lot out of uh, having a say in Michael Clifton's release and then developing relationships with both Michael and Renee. So can you talk a little bit about how it made you feel, how, the emotions and the strength and power that you got from engaging in this restorative justice process?
Yeah, it made me feel a lot better, and a lot stronger because I had a voice in what was going on, where I didn't have that before. And for to have the opportunity to go ahead and, you know, see what has become from, like I always call it, just that moment in time, and be able to sit there and look at the people that did it, and then go from there. And because like I said, at first I was very upset when I walked in to the conference that we had, that Lynn Lee was talking about, where Rick Salinger was there. And I was very, very tense when I walked in. I made sure that when I walked in, I squeezed his hand really hard when I shook his hand, just to kind of let him know where I was standing at that time. And then I sat down, and Lynn started, talking, and, my wife's sitting there holding my hand because my leg is bouncing. And I was just very nervous because it was such a different feeling and than I've ever had in my life. And when I sat there in front of him at that moment in time there, I was just thinking about what he did and how he got away with it and how he was set free and nobody ever told me. And again, I had to sit there and calm myself down and listen to who he was. And that's why when I went in and spoke with Michael Clifton, it was a much different feeling. Lynn Lee had prepared me for it so well in the beginning with Renee Lima Moran, and she is so incredibly wonderful at what she does. Talking to me and letting me know, just, relax, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, and making you feel so comfortable in such an uncomfortable situation that you actually do feel like you can walk in there and walk in proud and tall, and that you have control. And it's not so much that I am about having control, but it's when you have absolutely no control and feel that way is when it's a really terrible thing to feel. And she empowered me very much so. So when I knew that, when they asked me if they should let Michael Clifton out of prison and give him clemency, and what is my opinion in that, that's why I sat there and remembered what Lynn Lee had talked to me about before and things of that nature. And then that's when I told him, well, I can't make that decision. I can't make that decision without talking to him, because I need to have that in front of me. I need to have it in front of my face. I need to go in there and see and meet who he is. I can't make an honest decision, because if I say yes, he can, what happens if he's the same? If I say no, you should keep him in there, then what if he's 100 times completely different, and we're just sticking a man in there and locking him up for the rest of his life, when he would be a huge asset to the community? And the empowerment you get from just being with the restorative justice is very much incredible. And especially I have to say it again, especially with Lynn Lee.
Let me ask you one other question. I don't want to dominate this if someone else has a question, but when you met with Renee Lima, you said you were very nervous going into that conference and very anxious about that. And I'm sure one of the things that you wanted to find out was, what's this guy been doing for the last years since he was released? You indicated he was released on a clerical error. Was he living a good life? Was he living an evil life? Was he living a criminal life? What sort of life had he been living?
Actually, he was living a very nice life. He was living with his children and his wife, and he had not been in any kind of trouble through the justice system ever since he got out. He had been studying the Bible and things like that while he was in prison, and once he got out, he is now is still the pastor of the church that is about a mile away from my mother and father's old house.
Okay.
And that's what he was doing the whole time. And he had been a pastor and working at that church ever since he got out. So but that was the first time that I was, again, he was the one that had the rifle, and there was a part in there that when I finally got the safe open, he said, what do you want to do if I let you live? And I just told him I just want to see my daughter. And it was that point that, again, I walked into the meeting just on eggshells that I had created for myself, because again, I was walking in there telling my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, wow, I'm going to see this guy that, held me at gunpoint. I'm going to go, sit down face to face and talk with him. And he did this to me and everything else. And I went in there and I was very, very upfront and very guarded as I went in. And the presence of the Lynn Lee and my wife very much calmed me down to a point to where I was actually able to listen to him instead of just hear him. Because in the beginning, all I could hear was his voice, and I really wasn't paying attention. I kept getting lost. And finally, when I started to listen to him instead of just hear him, and then found out what he was doing and everything, it completely changed my perspective from when I walked in that door. And when I walked out the door, it was like I was washed clean. I felt so much better, and I felt so good about what I had done, and had the option and the choice to do it and meet him and be able to put that in the past behind me. That was wonderful. That's why when I was more mindset and prepared when I went to go see Michael Clifton, and that is why I told the governor's office that I had to see him first and sit down with him, and I wanted Lynn Lee to do it. And so that's when it came around with him too, because it is a very empowering feeling and a very wonderful thing when you have to sit there and admit that you made a bad decision at one moment in time also. And that it doesn't have to be that moment in time that is your entire life.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, thank you.
Just want to welcome everybody that may have just been arriving shortly. We are opening up to questions, and as I noted in the chat, we're here with Jason. And Jason, forgive me, I didn't get your last name fully.
Kasperick.
Kasperick, and what a story. Thank you so much for being willing to share today. And to you and Pete, Lynn, thank you so much. We have a few minutes that we can take to field any questions for those who are here in the room with us. And I want to defer to other people's questions, but I also have one question regarding legislation around the fund, the RJ fund. So
I don't have a question. Thank you, Molly. Yeah, but I did want to just jump on and say thank you for sharing your story. It really is inspiring to hear the positive outcomes that you've experienced through restorative justice. And yeah, I feel motivated. I'm working closely with a victim here in Oregon that's requesting a restorative justice process in her case. And so yeah, just feeling really inspired by the healing and justice and also accountability that can occur in these processes like you've described. So thank you, Pete and Lynn Lee, and also Jason, for all you've shared today.
Oh, thank you.
Sophia is the director of the Restorative Justice Coalition in Oregon, and I've had the honor of connecting with her on many occasions now. We're trying to do a little bit more collaboration together, and it's really a pleasure to connect you all together today. That's how we do things.
Yeah, maybe I'll just also add that I think right now Oregon is following in the footsteps of a lot that Colorado has already done, especially around legislation to support restorative justice. So thanks for kind of trailblazing those possibilities.
Oh yeah,
I'll
restorative
offer this.
justice out here is wonderful.
Sophia, you can tell any of those legislators or advocates in Oregon if they want to talk with us about how we did what we've done, or any of the details of the legislation, or we did some things right and we did some things wrong, and it might be helpful to know those things as well. And we're happy to share any of that with any of them. So pass on my contact information. I'd be happy to talk with them.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Lynn, did you want to share an email where people can contact? It's good for people to hear that aren't here in the room live, so that they can get in touch with you. What's your preferred method of contact?
So maybe email is fine. Do you want me to say that out loud so everybody can hear it? Okay. It's EELGNNYL@gmail.com. It's actually my name backwards with a G in the middle. And I will also put my phone number in the chat. It's 719-640-1650. Yeah. There we go.
We also want to make sure people know the release date for that movie that you spoke about today, Jason. I think Lynn mentioned it's May 31st.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Where can people find more about that? Is there anything online at this moment that they could look to?
Yeah, I don't have it on right now with me, but I did send it the link to Lynn Lee. So
Yeah.
if she wants to send it to you guys, that would be fine as well. I know it's the tickets link, but I think they do have a preview on there that was going on also of the show that they're doing.
Molly, I'm gonna send this to you right now.
Okay, perfect.
It's
So we'll
called If Light Closed Its Eyes.
say that again, please, Lynn.
If Light Closed Its Eyes.
Light closed its eyes. That's
If light.
premiering. If Light closed its eyes, May 31st. Sounds like an extraordinary movie. And couple synopses from what I've heard today, from your extraordinary story, Jason, before we close. Thanks for staying a few minutes over the hour, by the way.
Oh, no problem.
Listening instead of just hearing, and that you felt you had a voice. You felt you had
Yeah.
a voice. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and that's not something that you experienced in the traditional process, so to speak, at all.
Oh, no way, because the whole time was before they were sentenced to Blockbuster was my voice. I never had a voice. You know, it was their lawyers that did everything. My opportunity for my voice was taken away when they said, "Oh, we're just going to do this." So, but the one thing that I have learned to understand and is that you can't live in that moment in time. And if you remember someone for just that moment, then you're missing the whole point.
Mm.
You have to you have to get past that moment and see what they are outside of what that moment was. See who the person is and not the moment in time. Because you know what kind of person they were at that moment in time, but you don't truly know who the person really is.
This has been one of the most powerful sessions in my 13 years of doing this kind of work. And I just want to thank you again. I wish we could continue. Maybe we can plan another conversation together.
Sure.
And Pete and Lynn, I want to welcome you just to say any closing thoughts. And you too, Jason, if you have anything else that you'd like to share before we close. And warmly invite all of you live or down the road after this podcast concludes to reach out. Pete and Lynn are two of the most accessible public servants that I've ever met. And I really appreciate that about both of you. So in conclusion, anything else?
I just wanted to thank Lynn Lee and Pete Lee again. This Michael getting out of that prison probably never would have happened without their help at all, to be able to help me get there to talk to them and have that time. It might have never happened. So I have to say thank you very, very much to both of them for what they have done, and for Lynn Lee for giving me the power to go ahead and do it.
And I want to say right back at you, Jason, thank you so much for being who you are. And Molly, thank you for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you said it all. I think this presentation by Jason really demonstrates at a grassroots level how powerful restorative justice is not just for the victims, and he was a victim, but also for the people who were responsible for the offenses. Look at the extraordinary things that Michael Clifton and Renee Lima have been empowered to do because of engaging in this process and discussing it and talking about it with Jason. It empowered all of them to live better lives as a consequence. So, Jason, you have a powerful story. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Oh, thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share it.
So thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today. This session, of course, will be posted on your Padlet, and we will also be live streaming it out to drop on iTunes, Spotify, as well as YouTube. And we hope that you'll ripple it out, pass it along, share this incredible hour that we've had together today. Thanks for being a part of the global community of restorative justice on the rise. We're here to advocate and serve globally as this movement has grown, expanded exponentially in the past decade, especially. Thank you, everybody. It's a privilege and honor. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.